Mondo Thingo is rated M for a mature audience. It contains coarse language.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mondo Thingo.
Tonight, the big man of dwarf acting, Lord of the Rings, John Rhys-Davies. Nick Cave, from boy next door to dignified crooner.
Meow.
And the real costume dramas in the movies.
Hello and welcome to Mondo Thingo. And that's right, tonight we're going to be talking to that friend of Indiana Jones and warrior dwarf, John Rhys-Davies. And we probe the morose but sexy Nick Cave. But first, let's round up the week in pop culture with the ever-insightful Steve Kinane. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Amanda.
What's caught your eye this week?
Well, everyone I know is talking about Daryl Summers.
He's making a comeback.
He's making a comeback. It's been 5 years and he's coming back after Hey Hey It's Saturday got shafted. Daryl's making a dancing show. He's going to team up professional dancers with celebrity dancers. And I imagine, Amanda, you're going to get the call. I've heard you cut the dance floor up after a few drinks at a Christmas party.
Let's move on, shall we?
Well, I'm just hoping the show's going to be more successful than a recent auction on eBay for one of Daryl Summers' singles from back in the 70s and 80s. The single was called Give You My Love.
I remember it.
First bid, 35 cents. But finally, it sold.
Sold for what?
$2.55.
That's a cruel old industry,
Who
isn't
bought
it?
it? I want to know who bought it.
Oh, dear. Now, if you're thinking of heading to the States to become an extra in a Hollywood film, Steve, think again.
Is it all over?
There's a guy called Joe Biggins who started the Inflatable Crowd Company. And instead of using real extras that cost about $200 a day, he's going with inflatables. He's
so
made
like blow-up dolls?
Well, not as you know them. He's made about 20 films alone this year. And let's have a look at what they look like. Here's Joe in the middle with his inflatable
Joe
extras.
with his mates.
You can dress them up, all that kind of stuff. And not every film wants to use CGI, which is computer-generated extras. Let's have a look at a snippet of Seabiscuit, the Tobey Maguire film. See if you can spot the plastic. Pretty good, eh?
Pretty good.
And they squish down to about the size of a loaf of bread, so you can fit 50,000 of them in a truck. Like real extras.
Yeah, like real extras.
But the new Kirsten Dunst film, Wimbledon, that's coming up, is using them. And Ron Howard's film, Cinderella Man, just being made in Canada, is using them as extras. And they've run into trouble with Canadian Actors Equity, who are complaining that they're not using enough real extras.
Well, the poor extras, what are they going to do now?
Who knows?
Blow up the blow-up dolls, maybe.
Well, they're thinking of using them also for war films. Can you imagine a bit of stray shrapnel and the whole battalion's got flatulence? Off they go.
Well, I want to talk about a film with real people, no extras, Soundtrack to War. It was on ABC TV last night.
Yeah, and we featured it a couple of months ago on Mondo Thingo.
That's right. It's the doco by the Australian filmmaker and artist George Giddos, and it documents the music that's made and listened to in the Iraq War by both civilians and soldiers. Let's have a bit of a recap.
This is the one we listened to the most. So let's pledge allegiance.
Y'all niggas straight from the side. Them bitches be talking shit, but we slap them in their mouth. We the real deal.
Have you seen my wife, Mr. Jones?
Our sweet home of the brave.
Now, apparently over 80 million Americans saw that. It was on TV. And one of those people was Eminem's producer. He saw some of the artists in the film and said, hey, come to my studio in a month's time in Detroit and we'll lay down some tracks.
Wow.
So George is now finding himself in the situation where he's had to set up his own music label, Bundina Music.
Now, Bundina's like a tiny, quirky seaside village south of Sydney.
That's right. It's not known for its hip-hop acts.
No, from there to Detroit and Eminem's producer.
Yes,
How bizarre.
it's a great story. And George is now going to make another film called Bringing It Home about these soldiers and how they want to become recording artists. And we've got a sneak preview of some of the stuff that might end up in the film. George is just back from Germany where US soldiers have been on R&R and he got a few of the artists together in a park.
Gonna bring it from north, south, east, and west side. We're ballin'.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
We gon'
US Army either.
It's like that, isn't it? Janelle was an engineer in the Army.
That girl there?
Yeah, and in Soundtrack to War we saw her working on a tank. But now there's talk of her doing a duet with Beyonce. So it's amazing what could come out of George's first film for these soldiers.
Fantastic. Bundina Records. Love
Bundina
it.
music, isn't it great?
Now, remember last week we showed a sneak peek of Sydney Flash Mob?
Yeah, that's right. They had their first anniversary in the Pitt Street Mall. They kept pulling their bananas out and pointing them at people, didn't they?
Yeah, this is a spontaneous gathering where a whole lot of people turn up, do something silly and run away. Well, flash mobs are taking off all over the world. They're becoming huge. And you have to wonder, who are these people? Who wants to do this? It's quite extraordinary. So, Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks,
and
Amanda.
we've got a story now on flash mobs.
What's a flash mob? It's a random act of stupidity. It's performed by a bunch of people who probably don't know one another. You'll be given something to do and you'll perform it and you'll bugger off.
Most people wouldn't put themselves in a public situation and perform some act that's going to draw attention to themselves. So they get to try something they normally wouldn't ever do in their day-to-day life.
Congregate, act and disperse is the mantra of the flash mob, an email-born movement of localised public craziness. What started in June last year with a gang of New York webheads pulling stunts like the worship of a dinosaur in a toy store quickly spread to Europe as mobbers descended on a sofa shop in London, coloured cobblestones in Rome and flashed a fountain in Moscow. By August, it had arrived in Australia when a mob of Melbourneites pointed rubber-gloved fingers to the sky. 2 days later, a Sydney group, Syd Mob, joined the fun.
The first mob itself was outside the Queen Victoria building around a little statue. Yeah, we had about 50 people there playing cats and dogs, and it was just, yeah, it's the start of something outrageous.
We've done a stock exchange at the Country Rail Station, which was really a lot of fun. There was about 200 people for that one. The thing that killed me about that one was there was some poor young woman with her baggage looking over her shoulder like that, and he said, I'm going back to the country, they're all nuts down here.
We've had a race around Chinatown, big follow the leader sort of thing. It was just a hoot. Oh, Darling Harbour, we had another little hoot down there. Outside the MCA, we get about.
In fact, Syd Mob has become one of the most prolific flash mob groups in the world, averaging one event every 2.5 weeks. Over 1,300 people are registered through the Syd Mob website.
Flash mobbing attracts such a diverse group of people. We have kids, we have old people, computer geeks and uni students and parents like myself. You know, you must look like the most dysfunctional family in the universe.
We're trying to shake people up and say, look, the world doesn't always have to be regimented and we don't always have to be responsible. There's room in our lives for a bit of silliness. You'll get a glow and a buzz and it'll make your day. It'll make your day.
Maybe it's the social side of Syd Mob that makes it no flash in the pan.
Happy birthday, Syd Mob.
The group is celebrating 1 year of action with a double header.
What will happen is you will receive an email and they traditionally read, you will look for an individual who looks like this, is wearing something silly. Today I'm going to have a furry neck. So they get their instructions, they'll go and read them, and it's never a very difficult or complicated act to follow through.
Then it's time for the mob to converge, armed, on the location.
People get out of it, but mostly people laugh and people will join in with you just because they can.
I think the best thing about it is doing something unusual in a place that you go through every day.
Fun, laughter, doesn't hurt anybody. When you leave, you laugh about it.
It's something that I do that my friends don't know about or didn't until now.
We'll be back again.
Yeah,
we'll be back
we
again. There's a few months left in us yet.
Yeah, I think so. Every time we think we're going to quit, we go, oh, that was so much fun, we'll do it again.
Still to come, what Indiana Jones has in common with Lord of the Rings. We talked to John Rhys-Davies.
Let me tell you, Lord of the Rings is basically a dwarf's tale.
But first, another session of Mondo movies. Sometimes what an actor has to wear in a movie can be pretty hard on the body. Hours of makeup, being strapped into rubber, PVC or leather with the constant smell of glue in your nose. If it wasn't so gruelling, it'd sound like a party at Marilyn Manson's house. Well, in the soon-to-be-released Catwoman, Halle Berry's catsuit fits her like an extremely sexy glove. But in other films, the costumes have been anything from uncomfortable to downright dangerous.
The soon-to-be-released Catwoman has been a costume drama of a different kind. Anyone who's seen that suit, or Halle Berry's body in that suit, knows that as sexy costumes go, it'll be hard to lick.
Cat got your tongue?
The bondage-inspired almost birthday suit is the work of Australian designer Angus Strathy. Apparently, Halle Berry took one look at it and headed straight to the gym. It's not the first time that the Catwoman kit has caused a commotion. The last person to pull on the PVC was Michelle Pfeiffer in Tim Burton's dark and moody Batman Returns.
I am Catwoman. Hear me roar.
She wasn't doing backflips over the outfit though, and refused to reprise the role because the suit was too uncomfortable.
Meow.
Well, Michelle, try wearing a full vinyl suit in the Australian outback. Small budget films are rarely as good as Mad Max, and the money on this raw cult classic was tighter than Mel Gibson's leather pants. While Mel had actual leathers, the other cops wore vinyl, so the action wasn't the only thing that was gripping. But in 1923, they really did it tough. To become the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Lon Chaney carried a 15-pound rubber hump covered with animal hair. He stuffed his mouth with mortician's wax, wore a bulging false eye, and was strapped into a harness to stop him standing upright. All this, and he could still swing from a gargoyle. The award-winning costumes in the original Planet of the Apes were remarkably lifelike for their time.
And only a fool would give a gun to an animal.
Edward G. Robertson was supposed to play Dr. Zaius, but he withdrew because the costume strained his weak heart. And in one of the many other sequels, an actor hated the costume so much, he asked for the script to kill him off earlier than planned. Charlton Heston got the easy gig.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
But there's hot, and there's hot. In Star Wars, Peter Mayhew played Chewbacca the Wookiee by wearing a mountain of mohair and yak hair. Hot and smelly, yes. Fire-resistant, no. While filming in the Millennium Falcon, a small spotlight ignited the costume. Is that a smoke detector going off? He caught fire again during the Return of the Jedi, but luckily R2-D2 had paid attention during the fire drill. Star Wars proved the imaginary could be very real through special effects and costuming. It's 20 years since Daryl Hannah and Tom Hanks made a splash.
Come back!
Making this cheesy comedy meant Daryl had to lie still for 3 hours a day to attach the 35-pound rubber tail. And no eating or drinking on the set either, because a comfort stop wasn't an option. Excruciatingly difficult around all that running water. And shy Daryl added some costume of her own by putting Band-Aids over her nipples.
I was shy.
You were shy? After the car and the elevator and the bedroom and on top of the refrigerator, you were shy?
In the original The Incredible Hulk, Dr. Banner was played by Bill Bixby, and when he hulked out, in stepped former Mr. Universe Lou Ferrigno. Clever camera angles and bad lighting meant it was quite believable.
He has metamorphosized into some extraordinary creature.
Lou was covered head to toe in green paint and stayed in a refrigerated motorhome between takes to stop him from sweating it all off.
He's just...
Thankfully, technological advances have made it a lot easier on modern actors. Eric Bana played Bruce Banner in Hulk, a lavishly produced yet ultimately dull film. At least Eric could spend time working on his character motivation while the computer technicians worked on his muscles.
Coming up, a career retrospective on one of the first people to recognise Kylie's potential for cool, Nick Cave. Well, we just saw some films where the most dangerous stunts involve putting on the costumes. My next guest, John Rhys-Davies, is more familiar than most with the perils of the makeup chair. In the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he was transformed for the role of Gimli, the warrior dwarf, with interesting results. John, welcome to Mondo Thingo.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Makeup and costumes in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, absolutely extraordinary. To transform you into Gimli was something amazing. Can we just have a quick look to remind us of Gimli?
Toss me.
What?
I cannot jump the distance, you'll have to toss me. Don't tell the elf.
Not a word.
Now, John, I don't want to shock you or anything, but you're not a dwarf.
Oh, damn it. Found out at last. No, I'm not a dwarf.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'1". Actually, I was the tallest member of the fellowship.
Well, tell us about the makeup and the costumes. I know you had some trouble, didn't you, with the makeup?
It's a complete prosthetic, so it takes... I think initially it took us 8 hours to put it on.
Oh.
They used to claim that they'd got it on down to 3.5 hours. Yeah. Then you'd have the 45 minutes to put the beard on and get the hair right, and then the touch-ups. You know, you do 10 minutes of filming and then 25 minutes of makeup.
But you had trouble too with it, didn't you?
Yeah.
Your skin reacted to it. What happened?
I just developed a topical eczema, and it gave me a complete skin peel right around the eyes. I mean, complete. I mean, just raw meat, wet raw meat.
Oh.
It did not look good.
Now, I believe that Liv Tyler's latex ears melted on the dashboard of her car.
Why are you having difficulty saying that with a straight face?
It sounds like the title from a country and western song, doesn't it? But what...
She melted her ears on the dashboard of the Ford. Yes, it does sound a bit like that, yeah.
Were there any other costume dramas with the latex?
A lot of latex on this damn show. A lot of glue. And a lot of yak hair. I had a lot of yak hair, and I can tell you, at the end of the day, you know which part of the yak's anatomy the hair came from.
Oh.
Yes, tail, I think mine was.
You're here for a sci-fi convention. I know you're a sci-fi fan.
Yep.
What is it with the sci-fi fans dressing up? What's going on?
I think the marvellous thing about these science fiction conventions is it brings together such a meld of people. A lot of very bright children and young people feel alienated in some way from their peers and contemporaries. And a Trekkie convention is a way of meeting up with other like-minded people, and it's really rather sweet.
And in light of just talking about unusual costumes, what are some of the weirder things you've seen people turn up in?
I saw somebody turn up in an incredible dwarf costume the other day. Yes, absolutely incredible.
As a Gimli?
As a Gimli.
Gimli is a much-loved character, and it's a pleasure to put the tall man to the dwarf.
Aye, well, the inner dwarf is what we all seek, and while I'm at it, let me tell you, Lord of the Rings is basically a dwarf's tale, surrounded by other helpers. That's the story that I really think we should discuss one day.
It's the fourth in the trilogy.
Mondo Lingo, providing the must-have words for your vocabulary. This week, al desco. This is a term for the dubious pleasure of eating your lunch at your desk. It's an ironic variation on the term al fresco for eating outdoors. But the bird calls are replaced by phone calls, and the only wine you get is an angry email from your boss. One worse than al desco is al dispensing machino.
And now it's time to refuel your brain with another Mondo cheat note. And this week it's that bubbly, upbeat ray of sunshine, Nick Cave. Australia has produced some great musicians, from AC/DC to Powderfinger, early period Nicky Webster. But Nick Cave has probably caused more nightmares than all three put together. Well, except maybe for Nicky Webster. Just as easily labelled an artist as a musician, Nick Cave is actually hard to label at all. And after a couple of relatively quiet years, he's now back with a new double album with his band The Bad Seeds. Yes, between his fans obsessed with mortality and having a song on the soundtrack of Shrek 2, there's a lot to explore in Nick Cave.
Hands up, who wants to die?
Nick Cave is a screenwriter, novelist, poet and actor. But it's through his music that he's become one of our most distinctive artists. And it all began at school. The boys next door comprised Cave and friends Mick Harvey, Phil Calvert and Tracy Pugh. Their songwriting was initially primitive and their playlist was heavy with covers. But with the addition of more polished songwriter Roland Howard in '78, the band began to develop. Cave's writing became more focused and they coalesced into the combustible vein of chaos that was the birthday party. But they were finding Australia restrictive and sought out wider horizons.
I'm making a dead one!
For 3 years, the birthday party assailed London with a unique brand of vitriolic rock and roll, earning a cult following. They released a number of powerful albums, but the violence that was emblematic of the band reflected growing internal tensions. And by mid-1983, the birthday party was over.
Goodbye.
Cave returned to Melbourne intent on mounting plays he was writing with New York songstress Lydia Lunch. Instead, he fell into a directionless routine of drink and drugs. But his friends hadn't abandoned him.
Yonder on the horizon.
Cave began working with a variable lineup of musicians that gradually became the Bad Seeds. On their first few records, Cave's writing was heavily influenced by the blues and the Bible, which he read avidly.
Hungry like the beast it cometh down.
But his music was becoming more cohesive, and 1987's Your Funeral, My Trial so impressed filmmaker Wim Wenders that he built the climax of his melancholic romance, Wings of Desire, around one of its songs.
I say it's funny how things go.
His interest in movies didn't end there. Cave also appeared in and co-wrote the powerful prison film Ghosts of the Civil Dead.
Here goes the neighbourhood.
But music remained his focus. 1988's Tender Prey is a compelling album, if underscored by a life mired in drugs. But Cave feared that without heroin, his creativity would dry up. Then, in London, he was arrested for possession.
Come sail your ships.
But he needn't have feared for his muse. On The Good Son, he found an effortless human touch he'd previously skirted. In '89, his novel And the Ass or the Angel was released.
And trying in vain to closet his ears from the drunken ravings of his wife.
But it was so weighted in archaic language that Cave decided to give up the Old Testament for the sake of his writing. Meanwhile, he'd moved to Brazil, married and had a son, and was experiencing a rare period of happiness.
This is a weekend song. It's song in which to
It wasn't to last. In the years that followed, his marriage ended and he fell back on heroin. But he continued to record dynamic music. And with his Kylie Minogue duet, Where the Wild Roses Grow, from '96's Murder Ballads, he had his first #1 hit.
The Kylie song wasn't any true indication of what the record was actually like, but I was kind of aware that people would go and buy the Murder Ballads album and just kind of listen to it and wonder what the fuck.
But another duet on the album told a deeper story. Cave and PJ Harvey shared a passion and darkness that blossomed into an intense love affair. Too intense, and Harvey eventually had to end it. Cave was devastated, and '97's The Boatman's Call, an ode to love lost and rehab, has Cave uncharacteristically bearing his soul.
I believe in love.
His life in tatters, he found himself struggling with profound writer's block, and it would take another woman to pull him out of it. He and Bick married and had twin boys, and again, he found his voice. He currently has another film script, The Proposition, in pre-production with Guy Pearce starring, and is about to release a double album, Abattoir Blues, Lyre of Orpheus. Whether through art, religion, drugs or love, his life has been a quest for transcendence, and in the process, just maybe, he's achieved a state of grace.
God is in the house.
Next week on Mondo Thingo, rock stars put their screaming fans to work in street teams.
No problem.
English comedian Steve Coogan, from 24-hour party person to around the world in 80 days. And mutton cast as lamb, acting roles that take years off you.
Can't wait to see that. And that's just about all we have time for this week, except for this extra little something. It's continuing our movie costume theme with a film made in 1977 from Hong Kong called The Mighty Peking Man. Now, you don't have to be an intellectual property lawyer to pick this as a rip-off of King Kong. And as for the giant ape costume, I've seen more plausible gorillograms. In its favour, this film is considered one of the worst films ever made, in a good way, and there just aren't enough of those. It impressed Quentin Tarantino enough for him to release the DVD through his own production company. Shoddy, unoriginal, and gobsmackingly inept. I know you'll really enjoy The Mighty Peking Man. Bye for now.
Dave Hughes, Corinne Grant and Will Anderson. Bringing you more humour.
You're a funny man.
More controversy.
There's been a bit of controversy about this, though.
And more sensible debate.
You know, I mean, it's not maybe I don't know.
Now at the special time of 10 past 10. That's right, 10 past 10. The Glass House. It's at 10 past 10 Friday.